The ZV-E10, a small hybrid camera that's made for vlogging. Or is it? Let's have a look. In this video I'm going to show some samples of my usage of this camera and what I like and dislike about it. Let's talk about this wonderful little camera, the ZV-E10, a camera that's made for vlogging. But to be honest, I think it's better for other things. I'll start with some positives. The first one, anyone coming from other APS-C cameras such as the A6400, 6100 or 6600 will now know there's a flippy out screen. I prefer this for making video, especially for filming yourself obviously, which a lot of people would be using this camera for in YouTube, or making travel vlogs or whatever. Another bonus is the red tally light on the front of the camera and a red border around the screen when you're recording, so you don't miss that you are recording. Another attractive feature is the size. It's so small, it's easy to slip in my bag, and this is something I often do. I sometimes take it to work with me so I can go out on my lunch break and record lots of things. Maybe a lens, ND filter, that's it, that's all you need. Off you go. Though I have to say the ZV-1 is actually better for this because that's it, one compact camera in your bag, you don't have to worry about lenses or anything like that. And because it's so easy to slip in your bag and take with you anywhere, it's also great for street photography as well. It's small, it's agile, and with a lens like the Sigma 56 1.4, if I get focus, you can get some amazingly sharp pictures. Okay, image quality. Well, it's the same sensor that's been used on Sony cameras for at least 5 years now, maybe longer. It's old, it's been updated slightly, and apparently this one has better colours science, maybe. It's not that different from the A6400, though it does have a couple of things which are better than the A6400. For example, it's got eye tracking in video, and it's got animal detect eye tracking in video now as well. Though I do like to soften the 4K video slightly, for me it's a little bit sharp. There's a few options with that. You can use a mist filter or even older vintage lenses, which you can adapt to this camera very easily. I'll shoot it out of focus. Even though I do find the 4K images extremely sharp, I find HD or 1080p the opposite. I don't find it sharp at all. In fact, if anything, it looks a little bit broken when you go into 1080p mode from 4K. It's not sharp, and you get a lot of chromatic aberrations as well. I've noticed, especially in water, you'll get a lot of purple fringing and so on. In fact, sometimes that can ruin a whole shot. So I try to avoid the 1080p, though I do use it now and again for 100 frames a second, just for some slow motion shots, but I do try and avoid that. But if you're going to use it for 100p or 120p, that's frames per second, I would go into the settings, set it as manual, and then bump up the quality, because if you go into S&Q, I think it does it at 60, where you can put it at 100 if you put it in memory too. Just a little tip that's helped me a bit, and bumped up the 1080p quality just a touch, though to be honest I'm still not a fan. Okay, image stabilization in this. They are saying it's a vlogging camera, so you think it's had excellent stabilization, though in fact it has no mechanical stabilization at all. If you get the kit lens, it has OSS, which helps slightly. It's good for handheld things with OSS. I use the 18-105 lens quite often with it because I find that very good for handheld, but if you're vlogging and filming yourself, I don't think it helps much. It's still very jittery. You can use the built-in stabilization, which is a digital stabilization. This works really well for handheld stuff, but there is a massive crop. So if you are doing the traditional walking around vlogging style, it crops in a little bit too much for me, to be honest. And I would say if you're filming yourself that way, it's almost unusable. And it can have this slight thing where it's very jerky. If you move slightly and move back, the camera kind of goes its own way. But handheld filming other people and other things, I think it's great. And for that reason you can actually use Catalyst Browse. But to do that you'd have to make sure it's recording all the data from your lens. So you'd have to get a lens where it is communicating with the camera. And on top of that, you have to make sure that you bumped up the frame rates. If you keep it the traditional 50 frames per second, then you're going to find it becomes very jerky where it's trying to add more. If you bump it up to say 250 frames per second, or perhaps a little bit more, then Catalyst Browse will work well, though you might find it very jerky in the hand movement. And it does take time. To put in a 2-minute video can take easily 4 minutes, maybe longer. And it also removes some of the rolling shutter, which is a bit funny. I mean, the rolling shutter doesn't bother me too much because I don't do too many quick movements, but it's there and it is very obvious if you're not careful. And Catalyst Browse can remove some of that. It's not full frame. To be honest, APS-C cropped for video, it's never really bothered me too much. There's a lot of movies that are filmed on Super 35, which is equivalent to APS-C. Kind of, it's a little bit different, but it's along those lines. And there's pros and cons with it. Okay, with full frame you get that bigger image on the screen, you let in more light, you can get more background blur if you need it, but for video you don't want too much anyway, otherwise it gets a bit silly. You sometimes want a good sharp image with as much in the frame as possible to show what you're doing. But low light, obviously full frame's going to be better. And portraits and things like that, it's often better for that. But I think generally filming, Super 35 is fine. And it has got one big pro in my opinion. Price. Lenses are so much cheaper on crop cameras. So much cheaper, often half the price and more. So you've got that added advantage. You've got lots of lens, you've got lots of choice. You can use full frame lenses as well, and there's some great lenses out there. Obviously once you get better you want to bump up your gear, but a lot of pro end cameras use APS-C as well. So I wouldn't let that bother you. I wouldn't go with the whole YouTube you need to have full frame. Full frame's great, but you don't need to have it, especially when you're starting out. Sorry, a little rant there. So with this camera you've got an amazing lens choice. You've got all the full frame lenses, APS-C lenses. You've got, of course, the Sigma lenses, which I find fantastic. You've got the Trio. I'm recording on the Sigma 16 1.4 lens now. I find the 56 is extremely sharp. The 30 is a great all-round lens. Another thing you can do is adapt vintage lenses. And I'm a big fan of doing this. You can get a different look out of it. Great fun to use. I really do like it. And it kind of adds a filmy look to it as well. So what would I do to improve this camera? For me personally, there's a few things I would improve. First one is, I would love to have 10-bit. I know it's a lot to ask, but it would really help with the dynamic range. I would love to have better stabilization, especially for handheld. Also, I would love to have 60p 4K so I could slow things down. If I could do 120p, even better. And apart from that, there's not too much else to change. I want a better screen. The screen's not too good. And at high resolution, you'll be able to see better what's in focus. So overall, what do I think? I think it's a great cam. I know it's said a million times, but for the beginner, it's the perfect camera to get you started on video. But even if you've been using cameras for a while, it's small, it's simple to use, and it's great for this kind of talking head shots. So I totally recommend it for that. It's not a vlogging camera in the traditional sense of holding it out in front of you and walking around. I don't believe it's good for that, to be honest, even though it's marketed as that. For this kind of vlogging where you're setting up something on a table and then talking to it, I think it's really good for that. It's great for indoor studio shots like this. You can get some amazing lenses for it, so that's definitely a pro in my opinion. If you had a cage to it like the one I've got here by Small Rig, it adds this excellent grip to it and it makes it so nice for handhold shooting. Light, easy to use. You can hook up a monitor to it. Totally recommend it for the price. and especially if you've already got some APS-C lenses, go for it. As a dedicated video camera, great. As a little travel camera which you can take video and take pictures now and again on, I so recommend that. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you liked it, maybe like and subscribe. Entirely up to you, but I hope to see you again in my next video. Thank you. Bye bye.